This is the most terrifying and mysterious petrol station in the world, a place where those who enter may never return the same, where time stands still and the burning ashes of the past creep into your very breath. Some say a shadow still fills the tank there, but that shadow is no longer alive. In today's video, we'll share the true story of this haunted petrol station. But before we begin, a small request. If you're new to the British Hauntings channel, do consider subscribing. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a like, because what's about to unfold is something you'll never forget. The summer sun was merciless that afternoon as I drove west on the old Route 66. I'd been on the road for hours, nothing but faded towns and the endless New Mexico desert stretching on both sides. I was heading to Los Angeles for a freelance photojournalism gig. Ghost towns, forgotten motels, and the eerie remnants of America's past. That stretch through Albuquerque was supposed to be uneventful. But then, my fuel gauge dipped to empty, faster than expected. That's when I saw it. An old gas station stood by the roadside, half swallowed by desert sand and time. The sign above the rusted pumps read Pecos Peace Filling Station, open 24 hours. Letters were peeling and the 24 hours flickered dimly, as if the electricity came from somewhere that hadn't existed in decades. I pulled in, gravel crunching beneath my tires. The place looked abandoned. The pump hoses dangled like dead snakes, and a cracked vending machine by the door was filled with dust and cobwebs. But what struck me most was the silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I stepped out, squinting into the heat. "Hello," I called out. No answer. Just the groan of the station's rusty sign swinging in the breeze. I wandered toward the station door. It creaked open without resistance, revealing a dark interior. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the smell of gasoline and something older, like forgotten history. The shelves were still stocked with road maps, candy bars from the 1980s, and faded postcards that looked hand-painted. Everything was frozen in time. Then, from behind the counter, a voice rasped, "You need fuel." I jumped. A man stood there, a tall, lanky figure in a worn mechanic's uniform with the name Pete stitched onto his chest. His face was weathered, eyes sunken but sharp. He nodded once, then walked outside without another word. I followed. He pumped the gas in silence. I noticed something strange. There was no meter, no price, no humming sound from the machine, just the smell of fuel and the distant hum of cicadas. When he finished, he turned to me with that same hollow expression. "That should get you far enough," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just don't stop again." "Far enough?" I asked. "Far enough for what?" But he was already walking back inside. I opened my wallet. "How much do I owe you?" He paused at the door. "Don't worry, it's already been paid." Confused, I turned back toward my car. That's when I noticed something chilling. My license plate. It was covered in dust, but not just dust. It looked burnt, charred along the edges. I looked back toward the station. Pete was gone. The door now hung loosely on its hinges. The windows were broken, and the neon sign. The entire station had changed in the span of seconds. Where it had once looked weathered but intact, it now looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Pump hoses, torn, and a strange black scorch mark around the perimeter of the building. Heart racing, I ran to the car and slammed the door. I turned the key. It started instantly. The gas gauge. I sped off down the road, kicking up dust behind me. When I finally hit the outskirts of Albuquerque, I pulled into a diner and asked the waitress if she knew about an old place called Pecos Pete's along Route 66. She stopped pouring coffee. Her hand trembled slightly. "Pecos Pete," she said. "That place burned down in '83, electrical fire. Whole place went up in minutes. They never found Pete's body." The next few days on the road felt wrong. I couldn't explain it. My car ran perfectly, almost too perfectly. It didn't need gas again for over 400 miles, even though it shouldn't have made it that far. The fuel gauge barely moved. I chalked it up to luck, but that lucky fill-up at Pecos Pete's had left a black mark that seemed to spread deeper than I realized. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, expecting to see something, someone following me. Every time I stopped for the night, I'd check the license plate again, still singed around the edges, like the fire that supposedly burned That station down had left a permanent scar on my car, and maybe on me. It wasn't until I reached Holbrook, Arizona, that I finally stopped pretending nothing was wrong. I pulled into a motel off the highway, the kind that hadn't been updated since Nixon was in office. Green neon lights, buzzing vacancy sign, and a clerk who looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s. That night, the dreams started. I was back on Route 66. The sky above me was pitch black, no stars. The desert was silent. I stood in front of Pecos Pete's gas station, except it wasn't run down anymore. It was on fire. Flames licked the edges of the roof. The neon sign sparked violently. Inside, through the window, I saw Pete, his face half melted, eyes glowing orange, like burning coals. He raised one arm and pointed at me. "You were warned," he hissed. The flames erupted outward. I turned to run, but found myself standing in a different place. And Pete was there, standing beside the bed where I slept, watching me burning, but not consumed. My shirt was soaked in sweat. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked up at the mirror. Black, soot-covered handprints smeared across the mirror glass. I spun around. The room was empty. The air smelled faintly of gasoline. That was it. I had to know what was going on. I packed my things, grabbed my camera, and started making calls. Local archives, highway patrol, even a paranormal investigator podcast out of Phoenix. It took a few hours, but I found her. Dolores Boone, a retired Albuquerque news reporter who'd covered the original fire at Pecos Pete's in 1983. I met her in a dusty diner just outside Gallup. "You're not the first," she said, lighting a cigarette with trembling fingers. "Every few years someone comes through here talking about that place. They think it's just an abandoned station until they see him." Her eyes darkened. "No one knows exactly. Some say he lit the fire himself, trapped inside after his wife ran off with a trucker. Others say he made a deal, something dark. After the fire, people claim to see him, still working the pumps, long after he should have been buried." I showed her my phone, a blurry photo I didn't remember taking. It was from the night of the dream. The burning station and Pete's face in the window, half melted and staring at me. "You need to end it," she whispered, "or he'll follow you forever." She slid a matchbook across the table. "Return to the station. Burn whatever fuel he gave you. Cleanse it before it burns you." That night I drove back through the desert, retracing my route. The sky was darker than before, clouds thick. The road was empty, quiet, in a way that felt watched. When I reached the location of the gas station, I slammed the brakes. Just sand, old concrete, and the skeletal remains of twisted pumps. The building was gone, not destroyed, not burned, like it had never existed. But the smell of gasoline was everywhere. I stepped out, opened the trunk, and poured the last of the fuel from the spare can I'd filled at the station. The one marked PP. The fuel shimmered in the moonlight, darker than normal. The flame caught instantly, whooshing into a violent blaze. For a moment I thought it would explode, but it didn't. It burned clean, tall, white-hot. And then behind the fire I saw him, standing there, skin charred, one eye gone, a ghost of a man. He didn't speak this time. I drove away and didn't stop until sunrise. When I checked the license plate, the burn marks were gone. But something in me still isn't right. Sometimes when I pass by an old road or see an abandoned gas station, it had been 4 months since I burned the last of Pete's fuel. Life was normal again, or so I thought. The dreams had stopped. The burn marks on my license plate vanished, and I hadn't smelled gasoline in weeks. But normal never lasts long when you've stared into the fire. I was heading to Flagstaff for a story. A fellow photographer tipped me off about an old stretch of Route 66 that wasn't on most maps anymore. Locals called it the Black Mile. According to folklore, it had been rerouted in the 1970s after a series of fatal car crashes and disappearances. Vehicles found abandoned, their engines melted, tires untouched, windows blackened. Some blamed faulty construction, others whispered darker things. I should have turned back when I realized where the detour led. The road was smoother than I expected. New asphalt, freshly painted lines. Too new, like someone had paved over something they didn't want found. It didn't appear on GPS, but my car's radio picked up a weak signal. Old country music crackled through static. I turned the dial. The screen flickered, then showed one word. Then my headlights flickered. The temperature dropped. That's when I saw it up ahead. A black sedan on the side of the road, hood up, no driver, one pump, standing in the middle of nowhere. No building, no hoses, just the pump, and a single red light blinking on top. I stepped out of the car slowly. The air was thick, unnaturally heavy, like I was underwater. That same scent again, but stronger, mixed with something else this time, something metallic, like blood. I approached the pump. No numbers, no buttons, just a single line scratched into the metal. His skin was blackened now, like charcoal. His eyes were fully gone, empty sockets glowing faint orange. "You lit the fire," he rasped, "but you didn't break the chain." "What chain?" I asked, my voice cracking. He pointed toward my car. "You left with more than gas." My mouth went dry. "I burned it. I ended it." He shook his head slowly. "You passed it on." The pump lit up. A sound like a heartbeat throbbed in the air. Pete stepped closer. "This road only exists when it's feeding." I backed away. My hand reached for the camera slung around my shoulder. I raised it, snapped a photo. The flash exploded, and Pete vanished. I ran to the car. It wouldn't start. I opened the trunk, searching for anything left over from my last encounter. But there was something else, a tape recorder. Old, cracked, covered in ash. I didn't own a tape recorder. I pressed play. Pete's voice crackled through the speaker. I threw the recorder into the desert and tried the ignition one more time. The engine coughed, then roared. The road behind me was gone. Only darkness remained. I drove fast, faster than I ever had, and just as quickly as it began, I was back on Route 66. No pump, no Pete, just empty desert. But the sky was still black, and my radio, it played the same old song on repeat. By the time I reached California, the desert behind me felt like a bad dream. The sky had turned blue again. Gas stations looked like gas stations. Motels were quiet and didn't smell like smoke. But something deep in me had changed. I didn't feel alone anymore. I'd see shadows in my rearview mirror, only to find nothing behind me. I'd hear the soft click of a lighter in empty rooms, and every time I closed my eyes, that sound from the tape recorder echoed back. For weeks, I told myself it was trauma, psychological leftovers from my brushes with whatever haunted Route 66. I even tried therapy, but the therapist, after only 2 sessions, called me frantically at 2:43 a.m. She left one message before disappearing for good. I started researching what locals called Exit Zero, not a real exit. No signage, no records. But every few decades, people driving through Barstow swore they saw it. An off-ramp on the I-40, just before the Mojave stretch, hidden by trees that shouldn't be there. The stories all ended the same way: disappearance or madness. The deeper I searched, the more the pieces aligned. A forgotten exit, a black mile, a haunted gas station, and one phrase that kept surfacing from old CB radio transcripts and trucker forums. One night, I drove out to the edge of Barstow. No plan, no phone, just instinct and a full tank of gas. I didn't remember buying. It was 3:06 a.m. That's when I saw it. A faded green exit sign. The number was rusted over, and vines covered most of the letters. But one word was clear. I veered off the road. My GPS went blank. Everything around me shifted. The exit dumped me onto a narrow road that felt older than the country. Cracked asphalt, telephone poles leaning like wilted trees, and a thick fog that rolled unnaturally low to the ground. The only sound was my engine wheezing like an old man taking his final breath. Up ahead, a flickering neon light buzzed in the mist, but this wasn't the same place as before. The structure was larger, now 2 stories tall, with a rusted motel sign hanging by a chain. One gas pump stood near the edge of the lot, leaking dark fuel into the dirt. The building's windows were all blacked out, and yet movement inside. The figures behind him began to twitch. Back to my car, slammed the door, started the engine. I tried burning the motel tape, tried deleting the files from my recorder. They returned the next morning, unburned, untouched, stacked neatly beside my pillow. One night I carved the phrase, "I'm not part of this," into the walls of my rented room. In the morning, it had changed to, "There's something about fire that stays with you. Not just the heat, not the smoke or the pain, but the echo it leaves behind in your skin, in your bones, in your soul." I carry that echo now. The lighter never left my pocket, even after I crashed, even after I crawled out of that burning Pontiac with glass in my palms and blood in my mouth. The lighter was still there, ice cold against my thigh, whispering things I couldn't understand, yet I walked. There was no other choice. Route 66 stretched ahead like a black ribbon wrapped around the throat of the desert. Behind me, beside me, silence. Above me, a sun that refused to rise. The world had tilted, reality, and the road wasn't a road anymore. It was a vein pumping something rotten. I passed things I can't explain, an abandoned drive-in where the screen showed only static and shadows moved behind it. A roadside diner with no roof and hundreds of shoes nailed to the walls. A motel sign that blinked, no vacancy, even though every door was wide open and every room echoed with someone crying softly behind paper-thin curtains. I didn't stop, because with every mile I walked, I felt the lighter getting heavier, and I knew I wasn't carrying a tool, I was carrying a key. It happened just outside of Amboy. I fell to my knees, gripping the lighter like a rosary, whispering a name I didn't know. I remembered. I ran back through the road of jars, past the shadows screaming my name, up through the crack in the world.